Well, welcome to the podcast today, and we have a very special guest. We have Antonella, who owns Advanced Conveyancing and Developments. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Rob. How are you?
I'm really good. Now, it is hard to catch you these days. You have now 4 offices in New South Wales.
I do. I've got a Windang Shore Harbour office,
Yeah.
Wollongong, Randwick and Camden, the lovely Camden.
So you must see a lot of things that people and a lot of mistakes people make around conveyancing. And one of the biggest things we see is people say they go and buy a house. They all get excited and then they have the, I need a conveyancer or a lawyer. Does that still happen these days where people don't?
I had one yesterday that wanted a contract seen within half an hour because he had already exchanged on it, and by then it's too late, and it's a done deal pretty much, and there's only so much we can ask to change after that, and oftentimes the vendor solicitor will say no. On a purchase, I usually do a contract review, and then the client proceeds to buy, and in that contract review, we go through the contract, but we also ask questions like whether they got finance. We like an unconditional approval before we buy, or if we
subject to val.
If we don't, we always say to buy with a cooling off period so that we've got time to get finance, and so interesting times.
So 2 quick questions there that you've already brought up. First, it is important for people to engage a conveyancer before they find their house.
It helps, absolutely, to have us on board early in the process.
And for those who don't know, who are just starting out in the property buying, what's a cooling off period?
Cooling off period is when you are locked into a property, you officially exchange, but it's not unconditional, which means that they're usually 5 days, but nowadays they're 10 because of the time it's taking to get finance. So essentially in that 10 days, you get a pest and building, you get your finance. If anything were to go wrong and you don't want the property anymore, you can pull out, but you generally forfeit 0.25%, which is better that than losing 10%. So
and what a lot of people don't realise is the laws are different in every state, aren't they?
That's correct.
And we know firsthand, Queensland and New South Wales is very different.
Yes.
And then Victoria and South Australia. So just because you're buying and you're from another state, never ever assume that it's the same law.
That's right.
So if you're going up to buy a house and say you're in New South Wales and you popped up at Queensland and you want to buy yourself a weekender or you want to move up there, a good agent should be able to tell you what the laws are on the time, because they're relying on you to buy the property, because up there they're subject to finance.
That's right.
And up to 23 days, I think.
Interestingly enough, Queensland doesn't recognise conveyancing. So conveyancers don't exist in Queensland. You've got to go see a lawyer. So it's interesting.
Even if you're based in New South Wales?
Absolutely. I can't, my licence is just for New South Wales. I can't do conveyancing outside of it.
So there's your first tip. Do it at homework before you go and buy another site.
That's right.
And what else? I mean, good conveyancers these days is just not all about looking at the contract. A conveyancer actually arranges more than just the contract. What are some of the other services you provide your clients that people don't realise a conveyancer can look after them for?
Well, we're a service-based industry, so I actually enjoy serving my clients and helping them from the beginning all the way through to the end.
And by the way, I'm just going to interrupt you. If she offers you some of her sweets that she cooks at home, take them. They are scrum-diddly-douches.
What's that word, Rob?
Scrum-diddly-douches. Don't you know what that word is?
Does that even exist?
It does in my book. It means really, really nice.
I like to cook. But look, conveyancing, certainly conveyancers are there to assist buyers and sellers through the whole entire process. And it is a legal industry, and so there's a lot of laws involved when you buy and sell properties. So you need us on the journey. You need us to check in throughout the process as well. And Yeah, we like to help along the journey because it's an important one.
So they can come to you if they're looking for a building and pest, if they're buying, if they
Absolutely.
need someone, if they need a buyer's agent, if they need a loan and they need someone to speak to. You've got all those connections that people can do it.
Interestingly enough, yes, not just with the networking groups that I'm a part of and the chambers, but certainly, I've been doing this for 20 years now, so I've met handyman's probably the most sought after
Really?
thing that I get asked. Yeah, if I know a good handyman, because when people are selling, they need things fixed. When they're buying, they want things fixed. So in the property that they're buying, so handyman's probably number one. But yeah, certainly electricians, mortgage brokers, pest and building inspectors. Even just pest control, we get all those requests, and throughout the years, I've gained a nice network of people, so it's really, really good.
Okay, a couple more questions. Someone's selling, and quite often they'll go and pick an agent, and then the agent that says, "Can you send me through your solicitor's details because I need the contract?" And then they go ashen face and they go, "Uh-oh." What are some of the things people can do when they're looking to sell? So when it gets to the agent and having the contract ready, what do they need to provide you so you can prepare the contract and make sure everything's all nice and legal?
Well, usually we have software that can determine all the details of the property. So we usually just need the details of the property, the address. We need the dates of birth of the clients and their full names. That happens a lot on contracts actually, where the incorrect names are put on the contract, or they're missing a middle name. And in life, the ATO, that's really an important thing, and it gets missed quite a bit. So so it's attention to detail and providing the correct information up front on the correct spelling of your middle name, especially if you've got a sort of difficult name. That's really important. And the other thing I would say is really important on a sale is preparing the house for the sale. Even start that before you get to the agents, because the agent will come in and sometimes really tell you that some certain items in the house need to be fixed, and they can be costly. So just get the house neat and tidy, and the agent will do the rest from there on a sale.
So is a contract, or can people, buyers and sellers, negotiate or change something on a contract, or once it's presented, is it done and dusted that you can't ask for a different change?
No, amendments before exchange, unconditional exchange, you can ask for items to be changed within the contract, special conditions, certainly, penalty interest, those kinds of things. Whether or not you want the deposit to be released to the vendor, those are really important. So those are the things you can get changed. Also, whether you want to pay 5% or 10% deposit. If you've only got 5%, you're liable for the full 10. But if you wanted to pay 5% on exchange, you can. That's very doable. Completion date is a big one. Deciding. It's always a standard 42 days, 6 weeks, but you can always decide to have it shorter or longer. That's very dependent on the banks. So on obtaining finance and also discharging a mortgage can sometimes take 15 to 30 days depending on the bank. So it's really important that a vendor, once it's exchanged, has the discharge of mortgage in place.
Now, it's very common these days, because of financing for major developments like a block of units, the developer has to pre-sell a certain percentage, depending on who their lender is, of those units. And it's called off-the-plan purchasing. And it's actually quite lucrative. If you're smart, you do your homework, you can actually pick up a unit 18 months before it's even completed at today's price.
That's
and prices are, they are going up, then they're not going down. So firstly, from a conveyancing point of view, you're signing a contract for nothing. There's nothing there. How does that work from when a conveyancer gets a contract and someone says, I'm buying a property off plan? And what is the sunset clause? Okay,
so this is a really tricky subject, but buying off plan is very high risk, but it's also it can be very high reward.
Yes.
So I'll put that out there first as the disclaimer.
Well, you've got to be open.
Yeah,
frank
that's
with
right.
everyone.
That's right. That's right. So, and then, sunset clauses are interesting. Developers can always set them, but there's usually a clause in the contract that's an amendment to the standard. So, if there's a sunset clause, for example, that's 2025 completion, they can suggest that there may be an extension, and the extension could be as short as 6 months, as long as 2 years. So
someone looks at it and they say, well, what is a sunset clause? Does that mean that the developer is saying you must pay for the unit by that, or I must finish the unit by that?
no, a sunset clause is the proposed finish date of the development.
Yeah.
So if you've got a block of units, it's the proposed finish date of the units.
But it can move forward or back.
Absolutely.
And people sometimes get caught out.
That's right. That's
especially
right.
if they move it forward
Yeah.
and they haven't got their finance.
That's right. That's right. So it's really important to in 2 years, and this is why it's high risk, because in 2 years a lot can change. People can lose their jobs. People can change jobs. People can have life circumstances that happen, get sick. A lot of things can happen in 2 years, which is what makes it high risk. But it's also very high reward, and I've sold a lot of off the plan and watched a lot of people be really successful. So
if you're in a off the plan and your personal circumstances change, as you just speak, can you get out of an off the plan?
Well, that all depends if there's an on-sell clause. So,
what's that?
So an on-sell clause is essentially that you can on-sell it to somebody else, and that process can be done. You can sell it to somebody else prior to completion. If you can't, you're going to have to come up with the money, and again, that's why it's high risk.
Yeah.
So. But we sort of go through this in depth on a contract review. A contract review for off the plan is a long appointment.
Yeah. So, and then the other version of off the plan is house and land packages.
House and land.
And they're very different because sometimes they're one contract.
That's right.
Where you pay a deposit and then you pay the balance when the house is finished. Then other times you've got two contracts.
That's right.
One to purchase the land and one
to purchase the building.
The building. Now, one goes through a conveyancer and one doesn't have to.
That's correct. That's correct. So house and land is a conveyancer's job. A building contract is not. We're not builders. So a building contract generally for house and land goes through a home builder like Masterton Homes, for example, or New Living Homes, something like that. So, and sunset clauses with house and land are pretty spot on time-wise in a lot of cases. There have been cases where it's not, but generally, house and land gets done in stages often as well. So they'll do a stage.
Progressive payments.
That's correct. So
what's the most common mistake you see people making when they're purchasing a house to live in?
Most common mistake.
Because you see a lot.
Yeah, not doing their due diligence is a big one. So, the house looks good to me. I don't want to get a pest and building. And my job is to say that we highly recommend that you do, or some sort of, get somebody to take a look at it. Again, we're not builders, so a pest and building person is essential, and then on a strata, it's having a look at the strata report is essential as well. So getting a strata report and a pest and building is absolutely vital on
So people
purchases.
still get pest and buildings on a block of units?
You can get bits, you can get both, and we highly recommend both. The strata report and the pest and building all in one. We highly recommend that on any purchase of a unit. Of a house, pest and building is fine, but we highly recommend it. But I that's probably the biggest mistake I see, that people rush into buying. I really want this house. I don't care. I want it. And that attitude is,
In buyers, as being a buyer's agent, we call it buyer's remorse.
yeah.
Sometimes they'll get all excited and they buy emotionally.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
If you're with a buyer's agent, that doesn't happen because we have this habit of bringing people back and calming them down before they make that decision. If someone is out there on the weekend, they're buying their first home, they get excited, and they say they could buy at auction, which we'll get into very quickly in a minute, but they've done the 10%, we've gone off cooling off, it's unconditional, and their circumstances change, which sometimes the buyer's remorse, you can't get out of it.
Sure.
But if someone's circumstance, there's a death or they lose their job or their finance falls through after the 10%, is there any protection for them, or is it a case of it comes down to the vendor being accommodating?
Oh, that's another tough question. Well, look, there's a special condition in most contracts that is, they call it the death clause. So the only way out of an unconditional contract is death, bankruptcy, or incapacity. So they're the only...
Bankruptcy sort of self... You've got no money.
That's right, that's right. So... it can be negotiated on those terms. And so that clause is very important because I have had a situation where there's been a husband and wife and sadly the husband passed away and then the wife was left with the purchase and couldn't afford it. So, in circumstances, it then becomes my job to negotiate getting the client out of the contract.
So the last question before we wrap it up is auctions. Now, auctions are very popular in the capital cities. They are now starting to get into more regional, but mostly on the coasts on all sides. Someone's looking to go to auction. What do they do? Because there's no cooling off. Once you go to an auction, once that hammer falls, it doesn't matter whatever state, it is unconditional.
That's correct.
10% down.
That's correct. Or 5%.
You're all over. What can someone do if they're looking to go to auction and they don't know contract law, they don't know what it is?
Sure.
What are some of the traps and what are some of the things they should do before they put a bid in at auction?
Well, I always like my client to show me the contract or prior and go through the contract with them prior to the auction. Sometimes it happens quite quickly, in which case I've got to do a quick contract review, which is fine, but I'd rather look at it before they actually purchase. Oftentimes they'll provide a Preston building or a strata report before the auction, which is great to look at beforehand as well, so you know of any issues. And my biggest form of advice for this is have a budget in mind and stick to it, because auctions can be really emotional as well. I watch people bid higher and higher and higher, and I've actually attended an auction where the wife's hitting the husband to stop because they don't have that kind of money, and they just keep going higher because they want to win it. Yeah. So have a set budget in mind, know your limits, and then bid accordingly. That's the first thing, and then. But in terms of the contract, once you do buy, you are locked in. So it's really important. It's also important that you have the money ready to pay the deposit on auction as well.
But you can pay that these days by bond. You can pay that, or there's a whole different ways these days. You can
deposit
do it,
bond or deposit into the trust account of the agent.
And I've heard some people get caught where don't realise that banks have limits on how much you can transfer.
Yeah, that's right.
So you either have to pre-arrange it or at least have a substantial amount aligned, and you have to go. The best thing is to go and tell the agent, look, I'm bidding. I can only transfer 50,000
That's right.
a day, so it's going to take me 3 or 4 days to put in the full 10%.
Back in the day, it used to be a bank check. But
yes.
$30 for a bank check.
And some areas of Sydney and Wollongong was cash, I was told too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, yeah. But yes, prepare yourself for the day. So extend the limit just for that day. You can do that with the bank. You can ask them for your limit to exceed a certain amount for that day because you're buying a property. They usually need a reason as to why, and they can do it for a 24-hour basis. Yeah. So.
Look, before we wrap up today, 2 final quick questions.
You said that 2 questions ago.
I know, but you keep talking, which is something you do very well. And some of the quick things was, if you had to buy a property today, And you live in most of the time in the lovely area of Wollongong, which is just south of Sydney. It's an absolutely beautiful area. Would you buy a house or a unit?
Oh,
For you?
for my lifestyle,
Yeah.
I'd prefer a unit.
A penthouse, I'm told. You're looking out over North Wollongong Beach.
One day soon, hopefully.
One day soon. And what's the most important piece of advice you would give someone before buying or selling a property when it comes to conveyancing?
Oh, really consider the area. Really consider your budget. And don't be in a rush to buy. It's the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. Take a minute. So that's my advice.
Take a minute.
Take a minute.
Shivers, I think we'd all love that advice as we grew up. Take a minute, don't jump in.
Take a breath, yeah.
Antonella, it has been absolutely awesome talking to you today. How can people get in touch with you?
You can go to my website, www.acdnsw.au. You can contact me on my email or phone, so antonella@acdnsw.au or 0423 397171.
Or you can just type in advanced conveyancing.
Google us and we'll pop up.
You are everywhere.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, hopefully this has been really informative for you. Please reach out if you got any questions. You can go through the website and I'm sure I can pass them on to Antonella. And if you've got an idea of how or what else you'd like us to cover in our podcast, let us know. That's a wrap up for today. And as we say every day, have a groovy week. Ciao.